Hello everyone, welcome back to the Alabama Woodworker. My name is Huynh. First off, let me say I'm back. I've taken off the last 9 months from YouTube because my wife and I wanted to prepare for the arrival of our newborn, Eleanor Claire Huynh. Now that things have finally stabilized, I want to get back into the swing of making videos again and do a more in-depth video on my milling process. Let's get started. The first thing I need to do is take this rough board, which has a significant bow in it, and cut it into the sections that I think I'll need. Of course, the sections will be oversized because I'll be cutting it to final length and width later. But ultimately, I want to process it down because the longer the piece, the more drastic the bow is going to be. And that's going to be problematic for the milling process. So to do so, I'm going to be using my jigsaw. And I like to use my jigsaw because it is a tool that's less likely to bind or give you kickback. I could use a circular saw, but for me, I like to use a jigsaw. It's the safest tool for me. The next thing I need to do is face joint the surface of the board on my jointer. The jointer is used to take a board that has a twist, a bow, or a cup and make that surface flat. But before I do that, I want to explain a little bit about the cutter head that I'm using on my jointer planer combination machine. The machine that I'm using is a Hammer A331 12-inch jointer planer combination machine. The cutter head that I have in my machine is a silent power cutter head, which is Felder's proprietary name for a helical cutter head. A helical cutter head has these small carbide inserts that are wrapped around the cutter head in a spiral configuration. The benefits of using a helical cutter head over using a straight knife cutter head are increased life, a reduction in noise, and a reduction in tear out. Even though a helical cutter head has a reduction in tear out, I still pay attention to grain direction. With a Sharpie marker, I've illustrated the grain direction on this board. As the cutter head rotates towards me, it's scooping away material on the board. If I were to rotate the board 180 degrees, now the cutter head would be going against the grain of the wood and more likely cause chip out or tear out. Rather, I want the cutter head to be going in the direction of the grain of the wood to reduce that tear out. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and bring my fence up and over the cutter head to protect my fingers, and I'm going to raise my guard so that my board just clears the cutter guard. As you can tell, there's a slight twist in this board. So the way that I'm going to feed the board through the jointer is I'm actually going to have pressure on the two low parts of this board. And as I go through, I'm going to lift my hand up and over, making sure that I clear the cutter guard. As you can see, the board is now flat. There aren't any low or high spots, and the face is tear out free. Let's go get to planing. I'm going to set my planer height to about 1/16 of an inch less than the maximum height of the board. And I'm going to see what that maximum height is by using a set of calipers. So I've got about an inch there, 1 inch there, 1 1/8 there, an inch, and about an inch. So I'm going to set my planer to 1 1/16 of an inch. With just two 1/16 of an inch passes on the planer, I was able to get all of the rough sawn material removed from this board. Now, normally what I would do is I would take this and I would lay it on edge on my workbench and allow it to acclimate to my workshop for a couple of days, preferably about 2 days, because this wood has been in my shop for quite a while now, several years. But for time's sake, I'm going to go ahead and actually take this down to final thickness. And what I'll actually do is now I'll take the freshly milled surface and I'll flip it end for end, and I'll remove a little bit of material in each subsequent pass on both sides. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to remove an even amount of material on both sides, on both faces, so that the amount of moisture that's being removed from the wood is an equal amount on both sides. And in my opinion, this makes logical sense to me, because this is going to reduce the possibility of one side having more moisture removed from it than the other side. I brought my material down to final thickness, in this case 3/4 of an inch, and now I'm going to edge joint. Edge jointing brings the edge of the material square with the face of the material. The reason why I face jointed and then planed was because I wanted to have two parallel faces before I went to the edge jointing operation to have as many options as possible. Let's say I'm edge jointing a board and I notice that I'm getting a lot of tear out along the edge. Well, it doesn't matter what face of the board is against the fence, both faces are parallel to each other, so I can flip the board around and now I won't have the issue of tear out because I've changed the grain direction relative to the cutter head. All right, enough talk, let's get to edge joining. I've got two faces flat and parallel to each other and one edge square to both of those faces. Now I'm going to go to the table saw and rip this edge to clean it up, but also to get all four sides square to each other. If the milling process was done properly, your material should come out nice and flat and square on all four sides. Having material that is flat and square on all four sides is essential to my success in the workshop. I hope that this video will serve as a reference point for all of my future builds so that you can go back to this and see how I mill my material, and so it's something I won't have to repeat in my future videos. Thanks for sticking around and thanks for watching, and if you have questions or comments, please leave them below. We'll see you in the next video.